Hey guys, I'm Janet on occasion, and today we have a tournament for you guys. That's right, it is the Surtha X Grand Prix, and we're going to see who out of the 4 competitors that we have is going to be worthy of the Champion Charioteers Cup. That was a tongue twister. Anyway, so we have 4 competitors. We're going to do 2 best of 3s, followed by a best of 5 to see who will be crowned. So, first up, we are going to have Loremaster of Sotek versus the Gobbo King. So, Loremaster of Sotek, he really is a master of Warhammer lore. He knows this stuff inside out, and he's also a heck of a Total War Warhammer 2 player. The Gobbo King, you may know, was the very first ever chosen tournament winner. So, he's good. He's good. It's going to be great to see him back. Also, in the next round, we're going to have John Torn of Total Brohammer, who was the very first runner-up of the ever-chosen tournament, and Indie Pride of Milk and Cookies Total War. That's right, you guys have been demanding to see him play in one of these tournaments, and well, you've got him. You've got him. We saw him in the last Ever Chosen, playing some free-for-alls, and he absolutely cleaned up in that halftime show, so it's going to be great to see him duking it out one-on-one against some of Total War's finest players. So it's going to be very interesting. And also, we've actually pre-recorded it all for you, so there's going to be no gap. We're just going to go from one game to another, so it'll keep it moving nice and quick, and you'll be able to see a lot of battles in the next, well, like 2.5 hours, I think it's going to go on for, which is it's a lot of Total War. It's going to be great to see. So, yeah, I guess without further ado, we're going to hop on to the first battle. I'll see you there. Okay, here we are, game 1. As you can see, Loremaster of Sotek has chosen the Lizardman. Who could have guessed that? I mean, Loremaster of Sotek. Anyway, you can see Mazdamundi here is going to be defending the Great Temple City. So this is going to be a very interesting fight. He's against the High Elves. Gobbo King has picked the High Elves for this one. And it used to be an incredibly difficult matchup for the High Elves. But since the Queen of the Crone DLC, they have a lot more tools, which we will get into. So you see Sotek here. He has some Temple Guard on the edges. Elite Halberd Infantry, great anti-large, armor piercing. And they even have bronze shields as well. So that's pretty great for a Halberd Infantry unit. He also has Saurus Warriors in the front. These guys will chew through spearmen. They are very good, and they really take an absolute beating before they go down. He also has some skink cohorts with javelins, so that extra ranged pressure, it's kind of nice to get that early damage in, and they are very maneuverable, so very useful for some flanking later on. Speaking of flanking, he also has some other skink cohorts on the edges, which will definitely help. Mazdamundi has a fantastic spell selection too, so this is very dangerous indeed. You can see he has Ruination of Cities and Banishment. Both of these are free spells that he gets to use without any Winds of Magic cost, so they are very, very dangerous. He also has the Shield of the Old Ones, which actually adds magic resistance, which is a great 1-2. If you hit the Shield of the Old Ones on top of a unit, and then Banishment on top of whatever it's fighting, it kind of stops you from, scoring an own goal, basically. But he also has Arcane Unforging, which is going to be great for shutting down enemy spellcasters, as it does some really good damage, and it lowers ability recharge by 30 seconds. So suddenly, you want to use a spell, and you've been hit by an Arcane Unforging, you can't. You can't. It's 30 seconds before you can do that again. So that is devastating. He also has an Apotheosis for some more healing, and he has Curse the Midnight Wind to lower combat stats and armor, which is very useful, because Saurus Warriors tend to struggle fighting armor a fair bit, so being able to sunder that armor and stop their combat effectiveness is pretty vital. Also, he has a Skink Priest of Heavens, which doesn't actually have any spells. You see, all he has... Whoops, if I can find him. There we go. All he has is the Cube of Darkness, which will greatly reduce power recharge rate. So again, it's more tools to shut down spellcasters, because the High Elves have some fantastic spellcasters. So being able to stop them is brilliant. So he's got great combination there. Also, in the back, you can see he has a Saurus Scar Veteran, really deadly fighter, really good anti-large and anti-armor, so very formidable, and he's escorted by his cohort of 2 Cold One Spear Riders that, again, anti-large, anti-armor, very, very scary. And finally, he has a Bastillodon with a solar engine, and you can see straight away the Noble is coming in for him, so anti-large, armor piercing is going to help against all those dinosaurs. Gobbo also has a Ithilmar Chariot, great for killing infantry, just superb. That is not something you want to keep around for a long time. It'll be very deadly to Sotek if this thing can keep charging through his ranks. He also has plenty of spearmen to try and help hold things back, and he has some White Lines of Trace. These guys, good armor piercing, so, can get some good damage into the big dinosaurs, but it's their armor that's really useful in this matchup, because the Saurus Warriors struggle against armor, so having some armor in the front line, it holds them back for a lot longer. And here, this is where all the punch comes in. It's all Sisters of Avalon. His range contingent is absolutely devastating. So you can see here, missile damage at 25, most of that is armor piercing. So great for killing dinosaurs. Really, really formidable. But it does do magic damage. So Shield of the Old Ones can negate a lot of the damage from these guys. So it'll be interesting to see if that comes into play. Also, he has Techless with the Net of Amantok. He has Enfeebling Foe, Regrowth. They're all great spells, and also with the Potion of Shoroi, Techless can heal himself up pretty well. So it's going to be pretty scary to see how this goes down. Also, last but not least are the Fireborn. So these are Dragon Princes, they have incredible combat stats, but also they have anti-large, which is devastating, so really good for killing enemy cavalry or big dinosaurs. So, speeding things up, we can see Skink Cohort have come to the rescue with the Bastiladon, trying to deal with that Noble. But there are Temple Guard nearby that the Noble does not want to be fighting, so this could be iffy if he decides to go for him. Also, you can see the cavalry are moving up, but they're playing more defensively here. They want to make sure that no cavalry can get in the back line. He wants to see what's happening and get these guys, you know, to plug up the gaps where appropriate. So here we can see a lot of fire starting to come in on Mazdamundi here. It's going to do a heck of a lot of damage, but this was an absolutely genius move. The Athilmar Chariot has been pinned in place. If it's not moving, it is a sitting duck. So suddenly, the Temple Guard with their huge anti-armor and anti-large are going to rip through this Athilmar Chariot. And if it wasn't bad enough, the Spear Riders are coming in to try and help deal with them. And here, the other Spear Riders are coming for the Noble. So, not ideal for the High Elves here, but they are putting in a lot of damage into Mazdamundi. And that is going to hurt. And also, the Scroll of Hoth has been used, so now he can't use any abilities. So, there's a bit of counterplay here, which is pretty wonderful. In the back, though, you can see the Skink Priest of Heavens has charged straight in, try and hit Techless with a Cube of Darkness, and is giving these guys a bit of hassle. Athilmar Chariot has broken, still 2 models left, and it hasn't shattered yet, so it may come back. Here we can see Mazdamundi is taking so much damage, but here we see the Shield of the Old Ones is going to negate 44% of the damage from these ranged units, who are taking a ton of damage in the back line from this Bastiladon firing into them. Over here we can see that the Fireborn have charged into the Spear Riders, and they should win this pretty comfortably, because Spear Riders just don't match up, especially with an Enfeebling Foe on top of them. Their combat stats are 0 and 0 right now, which isn't good. I don't really have to tell you that. It's 0 and 0, so that's not ideal. Now the Fireborn are going to pull out. An Arcane Unforging has been used on Techless, so now he's the one that has to wait for his spells to recharge. The Athilmar Chariot has come back in and is trimming at the flanks, but you can see Lord Mazdamundi is taking a huge amount of damage, but somehow he's withstanding this. It's unbelievable how he's keeping alive, honestly. Cold-blooded, really useful skill, and actually helps at range. It lowers combat effectiveness in melee, but if you're being shot at, it's just great to be able to heal. So over here you can see Techless is getting caught out. And the Saurus Scar Veteran, rather, has used Deadly Onslaught and the Potion of Strength, so he is hitting like an absolute monster. 640 weapon strength. So Techless doesn't have much of a chance fighting him one-on-one. But you see, a net has gone down on Techless, and now the Temple Guard are right on top of him. And the Saurus Scar Veteran has got out of this fight and is now on Techless. Techless is doomed in this situation. This is not where he wants to be, and there's nothing that can come and aid him in here. So suddenly, he is dead. So Techless has been defeated. Mazdamundi is taking an absolute beating still, but another charge of Cold-Blooded is healing him up again. So it's crazy the amount of damage he is able to withstand here. But another spell coming down. So another ruination of cities, doing tremendous damage to the Sisters of Avalon. And even though it didn't kill a huge amount of models, they're on their back now. They're not going to be able to fire while they've been knocked over like that. And the Temple Guard are able to try and get on top of these ones. Spearmen are coming in to try and pin them down. But here, the Saurus Scar Veteran is quick enough to be able to chase down these Sisters of Avalon. The Noble is coming in to try and help, but the Noble does not want to be fighting Temple Guards. In the back, Mazdamundi looks like he might get killed here. He is not in a good place at all. The Fireborn are brilliant at taking out things, squishy targets like Mazdamundi. And here, he's trying to go for a rear charge on this lot to try and spare his spearmen. But things aren't looking great. Also, here you can see the Noble has been broken. So that is not ideal. And you can see he has had the Plaque of Dominion lowering his leadership. So brilliant use of that by the Saurus Scar Veteran to help tip it more in his favour. It was in his favour anyway with the help of the Temple Guards, but just breaking him, it stops him attacking. You can get more hits on him. The Saurus Scar Veteran gets off scot-free. So no one has a Lord anymore, but it looks like the Lizardmen definitely have an advantage here. They have a huge amount of ammo left on the Bastiladon. They just keep firing into these, and there are enough units to keep the Sisters of Avalon too far away to be able to get any shots back into him. So with him just being able to kill things at their leisure, it's rough. So here you can see the Fireborn have come in to try and deal with him. But look at all this backup. There's just too many units coming in here. Sheer weight of numbers isn't good for the Fireborn. They need to keep cycle charging, but he can't keep away from the Bastiladon for long, or the Bastiladon's going to get some shots into all these remaining units. So it's very dangerous. Here you can see these Temple Guard are being shot in the back, and now Gobbo has no choice but to have these guys turn and fire, just to try and whittle these guys down before they can get into melee, because he has to stand and fight eventually. He is taking too many casualties from units like the Bastillodon, and all the skinks are great at catching. Here the Noble did come back, but he's being chased by the Saurus Skull Veteran that once again has used Deadly Onslaught. So huge amount of damage, and the Noble has been killed. So it looks like these Temple Guard have had enough. They have had enough, but considering what's left on the field, it doesn't look great for the High Elves at all. And now it looks like army loss is beginning to take hold as everyone starts wavering. And that is Game 1. Game 1 goes to Loremaster of Sotek, which is fantastic to see. It's great seeing the Lizardmen, you know, really pulling their weight here. And if anyone was going to do it, it's going to be Loremaster. So, pretty beautiful fight there. He just had all the tools to shut down Teclis. And without all that magic support, it can be really tough for the High Elves. You need to keep those regrowths on the expensive units to keep them healed up. You need those nets to be able to catch out any troublesome units, you know, of the Lizardmen. There's a lot of utility there. Enfeebling Foe, just to help tip things in, you know, the favour of whichever engagement you're trying to help out. There's just too much utility on Teclis, and constantly hitting him with debuffs to his magic regeneration and his ability recharge rates. It's bad. It's very bad for Teclis. And yeah, Sotek was able to capitalize on that. Shut him down very quickly. And the Athilmar chariot, only 36 kills. A lot of that would have been skinks in the back line after he came back. But he wasn't able to do any real damage. He couldn't afford to charge into any of the more expensive units to shut them down. And Gobbo needed that anti-infantry to help shut down the line so he wouldn't get swarmed. And unfortunately, with the Athilmar chariot gone, he couldn't plug up all those gaps, the infantry was able to get in, and the Sisters of Avalon got completely overwhelmed. So, absolutely superb play by Lizardman there. Sotek really did the Lizardman proud. Absolutely great to see. So, that is a 1-0 lead for Loremaster of Sotek in this best of 3. So, we're going to head over to the next battle in a bit and see if Gobbo can crawl it back. Welcome to Game 2 between Loremaster of Sotek and the Gobbo King. Here you can see the Gobbo King has brought Norsca, and he's against the Dwarfs. So it's going to be very interesting. So here you can see he has Marauders with great weapons. So a few of them, actually. 3 units. And these guys, really affordable, just cheap armor-piercing units. Very good. And you want to be able to swarm, so you want to go quite cheap. As Norsca. Well, anything against the Dwarves, really. You want to be able to get in that back line. Also, he has some Marauder Champions and some Marauder Champions with great weapons, so that huge amount of armor with the Marauder Champions is going to hold off a lot of the Dwarves' attacks, and the great weapons are going to help cleave through any of the armored infantry. Also, you can see he has Marauder Hunters. Marauder Hunters are rather unique, actually, for sort of ranged units. They have very short range, but they have armor piercing, and they have Shield Breaker, which is very useful against the Dwarves. So that missile resist that they usually have, you know, all these Dwarven shielded units, they're going to lose that, which is pretty cool. So it just lets all of that armor-piercing damage take hold, which is pretty interesting indeed. Also, he has a load of these Norscan trolls. So Norscan trolls are kind of a risk, because they don't have a lot of leadership. Yeah, pretty low at 45. They can get routed very quickly, very little armor. So anything like Quarrelers or any cheap ranged units, Rangers for instance, can finish them off pretty quickly, and they'll end up running away very fast. So you really need to keep them safe. You really need to bring them in somewhere where they're not going to get shot at, so they can get that really good armor-piercing damage in. So he has 3 units of those. Also over here you see he has a Metal Caster, so Shaman Sorcerer of Metal. So really like these guys against the Dwarves, because of course they have Plague of Rust, so they can lower armor. So it lets all the non-armor-piercing units really capitalize against the Dwarves. And also he has Transmutation in Lead, which is just a massive -26 to melee attack, which is huge for the Dwarves, because Dwarves aren't very melee attacky. That's a word, don't worry about it. Yeah, they just don't really hit very well. They're more defensive. So that'll basically put their melee attack down to 0. So it's going to be pretty brutal to weather a storm when you can't fight back. Also, he has some more champions over here, and they're led by Wulfric the Wanderer. And Wulfric, obviously complete champ. Chariots are an absolute nightmare for the Dwarves to deal with, and he just has some great stats. He can get a lot of work done very quick, a lot of armor, and he also has this little gem, Hunter of Champions, which lowers speed by 48%. Dwarves can barely move as it is. Lowers armor and melee defense. So all the things that keep dwarves going, they lose, which is absolutely massive. So really, really useful ability. So Wulfric, definitely a bit of a champ in this one. Here you can see miners with blasting charges are basically the front of the dwarven front line. Those blasting charges, they can do a lot of damage to sort of cheaper things like marauders, so you can get quite cost-effective fights there. And also it'll break up that charge, it slows units down because they're, well, flying everywhere because of explosions, which is always good. And they do have some armor piercing themselves, which is rather nice. So they're very, very cost-effective units, I find. So here, he also has the Warriors Dragonfire Pass. The fire damage is really useful against Norsca. There's a lot of things that are weak to fire, but they are anti-infantry, so they can hold their own against a lot of decent infantry, honestly. Also, some Longbeards. These guys are all immune to psychology. Dwarf Warriors there, but these guys are immune to psychology, so any of the terrifying monsters that Norsca can bring, it's not going to terrify them away, so they're going to hold a lot longer, and they do have very good combat stats. So, very fun there. Also, a Rune Lord. Brilliant support character. So, if we have a look at some of his abilities, he has the Master Rune of Negation, which is 44% damage resistance. So, you know, suddenly things are about half as effective. Also, Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin does a ton of damage to things that it's used on, and it lowers their speed, which is really good for controlling the flow of the battlefield. He also has the Master Rune of Oath and Steel that will add 60 armor to anything nearby. So suddenly, the pretty high armor of the Longbeard, 100, it'll go to 160. So Rune Lord, very, very useful. Also, he imbues a lot of magic resistance, which is good, because Fimir are a very popular pick for breaking through that front line, because they have armor sundering, but they also have magic attacks, so if you can negate a lot of that damage, it really helps. So, over here you can see he also has a couple of rangers. He has some Bugsman's rangers, which are slightly better in rangers. They regenerate, and they're a bit better in melee, which is nice. He also has some Thunderers for some armor piercing. He has a Master Engineer to help buff all of his ranged units, so they can get more value quicker. And he also has the Dragonback Slayers in the back to defend. And last but not least, he has Giant Slayers as well. Giant Slayers are just wonderful in this matchup against some of the big, scary monsters. But Gobbo hasn't really brought a lot of very heavily armoured stuff, so it might prove a waste. So here we can see, oh, I completely forgot about these guys too. Gyrocopters with brimstone guns are a fantastic tool for dealing with chariots. They can just chase chariots down all day, and they have really good armor piercing missile damage, which is really nice. So it's a lot of help. Gyrocopters are very useful in this matchup. Can really help, because generally Norsca doesn't bring a lot of ranged units, but these Marauder Hunters are going to do some really good work to them if they can catch them. So he's going to have to be careful with the Gyrocopters, but the Gyrocopters can do a lot of damage to things like Wulfric, so it's going to be interesting. Also, they have bombs that are going to help against the more lower armoured units, which is pretty handy. So here you can see Wulfric has baited out most of the missiles over to this side, and the Trolls are coming in the other way, and the Trolls' best defense, well, best, yeah, their best hope of being killed, I guess, is ranged. So this is brilliant. So they've come in, there's no range support, so the Dwarves are just going to get hit by all of this massive weapon strength, all that armor piercing, and there's nothing to stop them. Here you can see these Marauder Champions are being whittled down very fast, which is definitely worthwhile. You excuse me, you want to kill these guys very quickly. So that is scary. Wulfric is being shot by those Gyrocopters, and over here you can see that the Shaman Sorcerer has debuffed these guys. So now 5 melee attack on Longbeards, which are mid-tier infantry. So that is pretty scary, but the Trolls completely unaccosted. They're able to charge in, and because of this wide Norscan formation, now the Giant Slayers are caught up on Marauder Champions. The Marauder Champions, they don't have armor piercing, but they don't need it against the Giant Slayers. So this is perfect for Gobbo, and these are units that could just walk straight through all of these Trolls. So that is very dangerous indeed. So all of the answers to the Trolls are elsewhere on the battlefield. So that is very dangerous. And here you can see the Marauder Champions, even under all that fire, did manage to get into melee. And now a ton of units are coming in the back. These are all Marauders, Marauders with great weapons, and Marauder Champions. So suddenly, all the ranged units are surrounded. Amazingly though, the Thunderers did manage to sneak out, but there are more champions over here that can double back. So suddenly, it looks pretty bad for this Dwarfen back line, and the front line isn't holding out so great either without that back line support. So things are definitely looking very troublesome here for the Dwarves. Wulfric has taken a bit of damage though. Some of the Marauders are really starting to struggle, but I mean they're fighting Longbeards, and the Longbeards have almost had enough. So it is not looking great for the Dwarves here. The Rune Lord, he's obviously able to support this front line a lot, and I think that's the only reason these Trolls are still able to, you know, still fighting this stuff. Otherwise they would have walked straight through. But here, the Trolls, they're just regenerating through most of the damage they're taking. They regenerate, and frankly, the Longbeards just can't do enough damage to them for it to be worthwhile. So the Trolls are having an absolute whale of a time. There's almost nothing threatening them. Here you can see the Rune Lord is going for the Shaman Sorcerer, because with the Shaman Sorcerer constantly debuffing things, there's just no hope of the Dwarves getting any damage in anymore. So that is very dangerous. So, not ideal. So, I can hear a boat. Where was that? Oh, it was over here. So, a boat was used by Wulfric. That's right, he can throw boats at people. That's normal, don't worry about it. And Dragonback Slayers here trying to fight everything, but against all this armor, is going to be rough. It's going to be very rough. Chariot still having a whale of a time. Way over here, you can see these Longbeards are still fighting, which I think is unbelievable. But over here, these Giant Slayers and these other Dwarf Warriors, they're still getting held down by the Marauder Champions. There's only 16 Giant Slayers left, and he needed all of these to get through these Trolls. The Trolls are pretty much unstoppable at this point. There's just nothing that can do enough damage. Although saying that, the Warriors Dragonfire Pass, their fire damage can definitely help against Trolls. But when they're on their own and this injured, I don't really like their chances. I don't like their chances. So here, Rangers are firing into this clump. But you can see Wulfric and the Shaman Sorcerer have completely caught out this Master Engineer and taken him down. And over here you can see with Plague of Rust cast on the Gyrocopter, it's taken a lot of damage from any missile fire. So the Gyrocopters are running away. And it looks like everything else is about to break. Well, maybe not. Maybe they're holding in for now. So the Rune Lord is coming back into the fight. He tried to chase off these Marauder Hunters, but the Marauder Hunters just ran away and led him away from his troops. So suddenly his AoE buffs around him, they can't really support if he's a mile away from anybody. So he's having to get back in. Hopefully he can help against these Norscan trolls. But it looks like the trolls have cleaned up most of the enemy here. The Longbeards have actually shattered. So really it's just the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass and the Rune Lord. But again, more debuffs, put them down to 1 melee attack and 14. 14 melee attack on a Lord, that's not very substantial. So he's going to have a real trouble hurting anything right now. And he's still under more missile fire. Over here, the Giant Slayers and these Dwarf Warriors finally finished these Marauder Champions, but the damage has been done. There's only 7 Giant Slayers left. I mean, they're unbreakable, they'll fight to the last, but there's only 7 of them. So they're not going to be able to hold up from a charge from these trolls, you know? It's just not going to work. And here you can see the Rune Lord, 100 Champions has now been used on him. It's put his melee defense down to 6. So, although melee attack at 34 isn't huge for the trolls, it's still enough to get over that melee defense of 6. So he's going to get hit a lot by this really heavy armor-piercing damage. And with his health going down, that tips the balance of power enough for army losses to trigger. And that is the end of the Dwarves. So Sotek, rather than have his 7 Giant Slayers try and win the fight, he calls that a day, which is understandable. I didn't like the chances. So that is now 1-1 between Gobbo and Sotek. So the next match will be the decider. So very tense, very good here. So but I mean, Dwarves, they're a risky pick generally. A bit of a one-trick pony. If you can't keep that back line safe, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. It's very difficult. A lot of the damage dealers are in the back line rather than the front line. So you need these layers of fire and just slow things down on the front line with their great defensive stats. But I mean, Gobbo just had a lot of numbers here. Certainly outnumbered the front line, so he was able to get into the back line. It was very juicy. Even with the buffs from the Master Engineer, these guys just couldn't get enough damage into whatever was encroaching on them. So they ended up just getting completely surrounded, and they can't really fight things off in melee. Certainly not Marauder Champions, there's no hope there. So, real shame, but the Dwarves just couldn't keep that back line safe. And also, the Trolls came in completely unaccosted. There was nothing focusing on them at all, and they're something you really want to shut down early. Because, I mean, 71, 37, and 40 kills, that's pretty formidable. Trolls aren't the most expensive thing in the world, but they didn't lose a single... Actually, sorry, they lost a single model. So, that's pretty great for the Trolls, and not great for the Dwarves. So, pretty fantastic. Great match. So, in a second, we're going to fly over to the third match and see who takes this best of 3. Welcome to Game 3, everybody. So this is going to be the tiebreaker between Gobbo and Sotek, and it should be an interesting match. So this one is actually Greenskins, led by the Gobbo King. I mean, he had to at some point, right? And he's against the Vampire Counts. This can be really tough for the Greenskins. They have quite low leadership, and Terror is going to prove very deadly to them. So, but this build is incredibly robust. I'm really loving this. So you see he's got Black Orcs, which are actually immune to psychology, have great armor piercing, great combat stats, so very formidable as a frontline unit. He has 2 units of those, and he has a ton of these Orc Biggins. So Orc Biggins, if we look, they are anti-large, which means they're very good at dealing with all, the Terrorgeist and the Crypt Horrors and all the big monstrous units that Vampire Counts can field. But also, they just hit so hard, and their combat stats are good enough with pretty good melee attack, and with War procced, they hit so many times that you can basically kill things quicker than they can heal a lot of the time. So the Vampire Counts' massive healing suddenly can't keep up with things like the big uns. So very interesting unit. Also, he has Orc Arrow Boys for some missile support, along with the Rusty Arrows. The Rusty Arrows can sunder armor, which means all the Arrow Boys can suddenly get more damage in if they're firing at the same target, because they don't have to get over that armor, which is pretty fantastic. It is a classic. But the Orc Arrow Boys, usually you'd see sort of goblin archers, but the Orc Arrow Boys are much better in melee than the Goblin Archers, which means if zombies get summoned on top of them, they can fight them off in melee. So if they can kill anything that bogs them down, they can get back to fighting, which is very formidable. He also has some Savage Orcs in the back, which are going to be great for dealing with zombies quickly, because they have great weapon strength. They're just great for killing very quickly. So against zombies, they can just chew through them very fast and get the archers back online. So a lot of very good defensive backline forces there. He also has the Broken Tusks mob, which have anti-large and anti-armor, so they can be very formidable against any sort of big monster that lands or gets nearby. Also, Wurzag is an absolute trooper. So the thing is, the Greenskins need to kill vampire counts as quickly as possible to get over that sort of healing, you know, massive amount of healing, frankly, the vampire counts can bring. But with Wurzag, obviously the War, you get that with all the lords, but that's going to really add to the melee attack. But also he has this ability here, the Bonewood Staff, which every time he casts a spell, his whole army will get an extra melee attack buff, which is pretty damn formidable. So really good. So really great unit, Wurzag. Effigy to Git is great for pinning down a unit as well. So if something does, you know, sort of end up in a position they don't really want to be in, suddenly Effigy to Git does a load of damage and pins them in place, so you can capitalize with things like the Rusty Arrows, all of these archers, and the Broken Tusk mob, or even just big uns. So it's pretty formidable. And here you can see this is a pretty typical vampire count build here. You have a Terrorgeist in the air, great anti-large, great for hunting things down, and those breath attacks really help against things like Black Orcs. Also, he has the Sternsmen, which will regenerate all by themselves, so even more healing for them. Really good anti-infantry. He also has some Graveguard with great weapons in here to try and help with the Black Orcs, along with some standard Graveguard to deal with more infantry. He has some spears in the back to stop himself from getting surrounded by cavalry, and he has some zombies in the front as flak. Some Blood Knights, which are very formidable cavalry, just unbelievably good. On the charge, I mean 78 charge bonus, really good weapon strength, anti-large, very formidable, and just great combat stats of 41 and 41. It's fantastic. Also, you can see he has a Necromancer hidden in the back. He's going to be a battery, and he's going to keep the balance of power in his favour by having someone powerful hidden in the back. And the Claw and a Gash is going to slow things down, which is always nice, as well as damage things. As long as it's in melee, it'll damage things in an aura, which is very good. And also it causes terror. It's just fantastic. It'll also heal things around it a huge amount, so a lot of healing. And he has Heinrich Kemmler, which you don't often see. He is fantastic. I love Kemmler. So Kemmler is going to be able to summon Krell, who is a sort of undead chaos monster, absolute beast of a fighter. And he can be summoned. He will degrade over time, but very slowly, and he really packs a punch. So Kemmler can basically summon a bodyguard, as well as all the usual buffs that he gets. So pretty cool. So we're going to move things along. You see War has already been procced as the front lines are coming in, but I mean these zombies are going to take a lot of the flak from the War, so I think Lord Master of Sotek would be wise actually to back away slightly and not to engage until the zombies can sort of just pin these things down for a bit. You don't want War on your guys, you know, when you're in combat. It's not good. War is too powerful. And here you can see the Claw and a Gash is taking a brutal amount of damage from all this archer fire. Huge amount of archer fire. It's doing a lot of work. So Invocation in the Heck used to try and heal him up. That's definitely going to help keep him in the fight. And you see at the back, the Terrorgeist is trying to probe the back line, but doesn't seem to be having a huge amount of success here just yet. So Krell has been summoned, but the Effigy to Git has been used on him to slow him down. So now Krell can't get on top of Wurzag. Krell has great weapon stats and really good anti-large. So if he can get on something like Wurzag, who is on a, you know, he is mounted, he is on a big pig, suddenly he's going to do a lot of damage. But with the Effigy to Git, it allows all of these archers to turn around and start firing at him. He has a lot of armor, and luckily the Terrorgeist has come in to stop the Rusty Arrows. But right now, Krell has no choice but just run into any old nonsense. Now an Here We Go has been cast by Wurzag, so that is going to give these guys huge melee attack. These Orc Biggins, 82, because it's not only Here We Go that has added that 44 melee attack, but also the Bonewood Staff. So that is 2 attack buffs in 1 every time he casts that, which is really good. So now Skeleton Warriors being cast to bog this stuff down, and now Wurzag can get out of there. Krell is almost dead, having done almost nothing. He has 6 kills, and that was just a couple of archers and some biggins, nothing formidable. So that is really well played by the Gobbo King, just to stop Krell from being able to get any use. And here, The Claw and Gash, because he was scared away early, he hasn't been in the front line healing his own units, he hasn't been damaging the enemies. So suddenly the Claw and Gash has barely done anything, and the back line has not been compromised in the slightest. The front line is still incredibly healthy, and that is not good for the vampire counts. All of this ranged pressure is going to do so much damage to these, key units. So here the Blood Knights did get very damaged, but they should be coming back in soon. They cannot be just left there. So here you can see the Terrorgeist and the Claw and Gash are coming in to try and help deal with the Broken Tusk mob, because these cavalry charging in the rear is not good. Here though, the Claw and Gash is having to avoid all this missile fire. So more skeleton warriors and zombies being, just put down on all these guys, try and bog it down. But he needs to get into these archers, because the Claw and Gash cannot withstand this amount of archer fire. It is too many arrows. So although these guys aren't brilliant units, backed up with the rusty arrows, suddenly they're a lot more formidable, and there are just so many arrows. It's brutal. This is looking quite one-sided at the moment. The Blood Knights are still as yet to come back into the fray, but the Greenskin front line is holding out hugely here. Now Effigy Git has been used on the Terrorgeist because the Terrorgeist was hunting down Wurzag, and now he's just a pincushion right now. He can get shot at by anything, he can't avoid any of the fire. Although it looks like he did end up getting out of a fight there, because if flying units aren't being bogged down in combat by anything on the ground, they will eventually just rise. They will just fly. But he is still pinned by the FG to Git. Actually, that has worn off now. But that is something you need to sort of concern yourself with. You need to make sure you have something fighting it to keep it on the ground, or else he will avoid a load of the fire rising back to the surface. So all of these vital units, they're having to try and come back in, but under this fire, there's just no way to get back into the fight. Over here you can see the Blood Knights are trying to, but with all these big uns poised and the Savage Orcs, it's not going to be easy for them to just charge through and kill everything. So the archers are still going to be doing a lot of work. They've all turned around to shoot the Blood Knights, which does give the Claw and Gash and the Terrorgeist an in. But the Claw and Gash has been so far away, he's got almost no value in this fight. He's just constantly been kept in check. And unless he can be here with the rest of his forces, supporting, healing and damaging the enemy, then it's just not going to get the use. It's just not going to be worthwhile. So pretty scary just to see how much this has been shut down, how, its utility has just been completely negated here. So very scary indeed. Now the Blood Knights completely surrounded and fired upon, almost down. They are crumbling, only 8 left. Wurzag still pretty healthy. Kemmler, though, barely taking any damage at all. It looks like Gobbo is trying to basically whittle away all of the big killing units and leaving Kemmler to his own devices, which is good for Kemmler, but not great for the rest of his army. He can't support everything. He just doesn't have enough magic to be able to heal up everything. That's what the Claw and Gash is for. And the Claw and Gash has been kept in check, so he hasn't been able to do anything. It's really rough. Wurzag's still just running around, having a whale of a time, chuckling away on his big old pig. Lovely. And here the Terrorgeist is just completely surrounded against all this anti-large and all these big uns. They're going to do a lot of damage to him. And the rusty arrows, if they can start firing into him, his armor is going to be lowered and the big uns will get even more value. But I'm not quite sure what they're doing right now. Anyway, War has been procced again, so that is the last thing that Sotek needed. Sotek did not need the entire enemy army to get even more melee attack. He's struggling to keep hold of this as it is. So very scary. He still has the Necromancer back here. Just, basically using the Forbidden Rod just to make more magic for himself and keeping the balance of power in check. But it does look like it's going very much in favour of the Greenskins right now. The Sternsmen, they're nearing their healing cap, and they are starting to get fired upon by a lot of units. And with the War, those Black Orcs are going to hit so many times and do so much damage. It is not looking good for the Vampire Counts right now, and I think it's just a matter of time before Krell folds. Here we can see he's near his healing cap as well, so any damage he's taking, he's not going to be able to heal up. The Claw and Gash and the Terrorgeist are both long gone, and everything else is starting to disintegrate. And that is army losses. That is a win for the Gobbo King with the Greenskins. Absolutely wonderful to see the Greenskins. Really just textbook play, beautiful build for dealing with the Vampire Count. He had everything he needed, and he was just able to keep all of the best units in check, so Sotek couldn't do anything. He just couldn't bring his best units to bear without them being in horrible, horrible danger. And without that, your front line is kind of on its own. So, pretty brutal. Pretty brutal indeed. I mean, if we look at the stats here, Terrorgeist, 55 kills, Blood Knights, 59 kills. That is not enough kills, it's just not enough. These units should be getting a lot more value. Kemmler, summoning Krell is usually a great move, but Krell couldn't do anything. He was pinned down immediately. Gobbo King knew that that was going to be the biggest threat, so he saved the effigy of the Git for Krell, knowing that Krell can really just go on a tear if he's left to his own devices. So hitting him with the effigy and then firing on him like that with everything, you can shut him down very, very quickly, and it just stops him getting any use out of him, and that is kind of Kemmler's biggest ace in the hole. So negating that completely is very, very tough. So absolutely fantastic play here. Hundreds of kills for Biggins. They just hit so hard, they're able to just kill models very quickly. They don't have to worry too much about them hitting something and then the model, you know, replenishing his health from all the healing that Vampire Counts can bring. It's just going to keep killing stuff. So yeah, pretty fantastic. 171 for the Black Orcs. Just a tremendous amount of kills across the board. Except the archers. Not a huge amount of kills, but who cares? I mean, they were shooting at such valuable targets. These kills meant so much. All the damage they did to the Mortis Engine, keeping that completely in check. 6 kills from Mortis Engine. You know, for the Claw of Nagash, you expect, you know, over 100 kills with the Claw of Nagash in a battle. 6 is awful, but he had no choice but to keep it away. He just couldn't get it involved. There just wasn't enough backline pressure to stop all these arrows. So it was pretty incredible. I think he might have actually done better if he brought the Necromancer into the fray rather than having him hidden in the back. Just having something else that could lay down zombies to try and tie up that back line, I think would have been vital. It would have just given enough respite for the Claw and Nagash, the Blood Knights, the Terror guys to be able to get some work done without having to constantly be on the retreat. So, you know, Necromancer hidden in the woods, great way to replenish magic, you know, really sneaky tactic, but honestly, I think he just needed more spells. He needed more spellcasters, just putting down those zombies to tie up the back line, because the back line was his undoing. So, pretty amazing fight though, pretty fantastic. So that is a 2-1 victory to the Gobbo King, which means Gobbo King is going on to the finals. We don't know who's fighting yet, but we'll soon find out. So, guys, be sure to check out Lore Master Sotek. Fantastic lore videos. He really knows his stuff. He's been collecting Warhammer for years. And, yeah, he is definitely an expert at the stuff. So if you want to learn more about the Warhammer world in general, obviously go check out Lore Master Sotek. He is the place to be. And, of course, he does play Warhammer Total War, so, you know, it's all good. It's all good stuff. And the Gobbo King, well, we'll see him again, but if you have to go anywhere, be sure to check out his channel. And I think that's it for this round. So, on to the next one.